There was a little hinged door on the side of the box. Natas reached in and grabbed one slip of paper from it. The crowd looked anxiously at the little paper as he read it to himself. Natas's grin widened even to his ears, and his eyes lit up. "We have a winner!" he yelled as he held up the piece of paper. "Our little pet will die by—" All the people looked up in anticipation of Natas's answer. "By the beating with blunt objects." The crowd yelled and hollered, as this was a crowd favorite. This allowed the townspeople to add even more say to the entertainment, because this method allowed them to choose the blunt weapons to throw to the strong men. The woman, in agony, began to cry even more as the crowd scattered around looking for and grabbing any blunt object lying around. The townspeople threw what they found onto the stage right next to the ugly woman. Natas grabbed a small mace next to his feet and raised it above his head and said, "Are you ready, my children? Let's begin." But just as he was about to lower the mace on the woman, a cry roared out beyond the crowd. The people turned their head left and right, not knowing the voice, and then discovered who yelled. Down the dirt road, past the unattended concession stands, there marched a young man. His skin was dark, and his clothes were like gold. He held a great sword in his hand that had the engraving of a language not known by the people. As he marched toward the stage, the people scattered to the opposite side of the stage. His voice roared once again, "Natas, come here, you worm!" Natas seemed to hunch as little as he walked toward the golden figure, and the bags under his eyes showed. "My prince, what a delight to have you here to grace our festivities." His voice didn't match his words, but he bowed anyway. What's the meaning of this horrific display?" Natas smiled and pounced on the prince's words. "It is your father's decree, my prince. You must know of the law. It clearly states that whoever is scarred and has the disease must be put to death." "I know of the law, Natas. I wrote it myself. But you mistell the people of the rest of the law. There is another way." The prince looked over Natas's shoulder and stared into the eyes of the ugly woman on the stage. Natas objected with his eyes, but then began to smile. "If it is your wish, my prince." The prince stepped up to the stage and laid his sword in front of his feet. He took the ugly woman by the arms and held her up to her and looked into her eyes. She looked at him in wonder and wasn't sure what was happening. The prince caressed her face and kissed her on the oozing, pussing cheek. Then he whispered in her ear and carried her off the stage. The people crowded up around her, but didn't touch her. The prince stepped back onto the stage and stood right in the middle. The faces of the crowd lit up as they began to realize what was happening. The cheering and the jeering started up all over again. The weapons on the stage floor were picked up by the strong men, and the biggest man threw the first hit. The first swing hit the prince in the face, and his dark skin tore, and blood bridged the gaps. The bats and clubs and rods came one at a time, and every strike was met with cheers and more blood. The golden clothes of the prince tore and turned blood red and brown. As the beating commenced, the ugly woman was going unnoticed in the corner beyond the crowd. She was crying and yelling in anguish as she saw the prince fall after every blow. She didn't notice, however, that after every blow her scars and wounds were slowly vanishing. Through the ranting of the crowd, a few townspeople near the young woman noticed she had absolutely no blemishes or scars on her face, and that her ear was now whole. The old woman jumped back as she saw the beautiful young woman stand as she stared at her new body. A couple more townspeople stopped watching the beating and started noticing this amazing transformation. During her transformation, the townspeople began to notice something they never knew before. The woman was far more beautiful than themselves. In fact, they began to look for windows, pots, and mirrors, and wells, and discovered that they had scars and sores all over their faces. Even the mayor was covered all in boils. Soon a riot broke out as every townsperson took a look at the woman and then at themselves. The strong men were still beating the prince when they noticed their fellow executioners had the ugliest visages and ran away. Now, at this peak of hysteria, Natas became nervous and was looking around as if looking for a hiding place. The prince, lying in his own blood, looked up as he saw the beautiful woman. Their eyes met between the crazed townspeople, and she realized what he had done. She ran up to the now red stage and fell down into the prince's blood and put her arms around him. Through the noise and the racket of the frenzied fair, the prince, with a nasty gash on his left eye, a broken jaw, and no ear, looked up to the woman and said to her, "Will you marry me?"